Telling stories applies to every single part of your life.
You just mentioned the O-1, but I feel like it's less commonly talked about.
I would say 1 out of 10 people probably know about the O-1. And this is great for founders who don't want to take money from their company or don't have money to take from their company.
What would make you choose their message over the 99 other messages? What's something that catches your eye?
We don't know how to write well anymore. We outsource everything to using an AI tool. Slightly pisses me off, but let's channel that productively now.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to 0 to 1. Today, we have a very special guest. Our guest today is Soundarya Balasubramani, an author, entrepreneur, and immigration advocate who has inspired thousands of international students and professionals. She is the founder of the Unshackled Club, a community that supports immigrants in navigating talent visa processes as well as achieving their dreams. She is also the author of Admitted, Unshackled, and her upcoming book, 1,000 Days of Love, which chronicles her experiences and learnings over a transformative 3-year journey. So her expertise span studying abroad, founding a company as an international professional, which is no small feat, and also successfully securing the O-1 visa. So thank you so much for joining us today, Soundarya.
Thank you. That was so perfect. I wish you could send me that intro so I could use as a bio. Thank you so much, both of you, for doing that.
No, we're very, very excited. And we have all our listeners are also have been asking us a bunch of questions in advance. So we really want to touch base on those and really get to know you, honestly. We also hear that you moved from India to the US as an international student. So what was that journey like for you, and how did it shape your career and your personal growth? Because I'm sure it was not easy.
Well, you both are international students. So I literally just made a post on this 2 days ago or yesterday on social media talking about the very first day in New York. Are you both in New York right now?
Yes, we both are based in New York.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Great. So you know that Harlem is not a very safe location, or not a place that you'd want to find yourself in the night at 12 a.m. But I was talking about how at the end of my first day, I was literally in Harlem at 12 a.m. Phone was dead. It was biting cold, no jacket, and I didn't know how to get home. And I thought I was going to get mugged and shot at and killed. Because that's what I heard about Harlem.
Mm-hmm.
In the months leading up to moving to the US and New York specifically, people kept telling, don't go to Harlem at night, don't go to Harlem. And that's exactly where I ended up. So it was just so poetically ironic that I was there. But eventually I got home safe. And the next day was much better than the first day. And it's like a highs and lows, right? Every day feels like an adventure when you're in a new country for the first time. And you have to learn to do your laundry for the first time, learn to cook, which I still don't know how to cook very well. Yeah, I feel like we could write an entire book on the adventures of an international student abroad. But that very first day, it was such a big start to this new adventure where I was thrown into the deep end of a pool and I was just learning to swim. So I'll never forget that.
That's super interesting because I felt the exact same thing when I first came to the US. And on that same note, we have a lot of students, traveling to the US for their studies, and they're wondering what was the one cultural shock that made you second guess your decision as soon as you got to the US, and how did you push through it really?
Honestly, the very first culture shock was using toilet paper. It still seems so foreign to me because in India you use water. I mean, it just...
Yeah.
Without going into that was the very first culture shock. Second, more serious culture shock that I think I felt was this idea of networking. In India, the way you get a job is slightly different, or at least it was when I graduated several years ago. There's something called a placement committee in your college that takes care of bringing companies to your university. And all you have to do is kind of put on a suit, get ready, and go for the interview. But in the States, yes, there are career fairs where companies come and you can go talk to them. But it's not as spoon-fed, I would say, as it is in India. So yeah, I mean, the first time I had to, in the US, you have to put on a suit, prepare for the networking event, go and hope that somebody notices you and gives you a referral, and then follow up with them 5 times, keep checking in, and then hope that leads to an interview, pass the interview. I feel like there is a lot more agency that you have to take up from day one or even day -1 when you're looking for a job in the US. And that I wasn't used to. I never even went through the Indian job search system, so I don't know how that is, but I know from secondhand experiences. Getting an internship was harder for me than getting into the university and into Columbia University.
Mhm.
So that was a big culture shock.
I specifically felt this when I came to New York, but I felt like everything in New York is about networking. Everything that was organized had like a networking intent behind it.
My mentor, who I've talked about a lot and who inspired my upcoming book, 1,000 Days of Love, Rajesh, he says that we need to stop saying networking and start saying net giving. He is a very generous person, just as a person. And it wasn't until I met him, and also it wasn't until I was on the receiving end of dozens of messages every single week from students that I realized what the mentality is of somebody who is receiving these messages. Because I'm telling you, the moment you go from one side to the other, there is a brief period when you get a job, when you really feel this intense need to give back to the community. And you probably say yes to anyone who messages you asking for your time, who wants to get a referral, and so on. But at some point, you also graduate from that phase because life happened. Your new job takes, a lot of your time. You buy a car, you get married, other things happen. So I think the mistake I made, and I also know students make these mistakes because I can see it on the other side, is we ask before we give. And I know it's frustrating to go through the process of, now I have to take the long way and give something first and then ask for something. But I guarantee that it'll work because let's say I get 100 messages over a month, for example. Maybe one message in that 100 message is somebody reaching out and saying, I have read this article of yours in depth. I love reading it or something. I learned something from it. And is there any way that I can help you or support you? Or somebody coming and saying, hey, I met this person at this event and I noticed that you're looking for somebody like this or you're hiring for somebody like this. Do you want me to make an introduction? Students think there is nothing they can give to someone who is already experienced and who has a job, but that's not true. I actually think with AI especially, you can come up with so many different ideas and ways you can give something first. And so maybe 1 out of 100 actually does that. And the other 99 blur. I don't remember their names because they all blur into this, blob of people who reach out asking for time. And then there is this one person who sticks out. And at some point, if I want to refer somebody, I'm not going to think of the 99 people. I'm only going to think of that one person.
And so for people listening to this, how can they be that one person? What would make you choose their message over the 99 other messages?
Now we're getting into how to write effective emails. And my God, AI has made this worse, I think. Like we don't know how to write well anymore. We outsource everything to using an AI tool. And it slightly pisses me off, but let's channel that productively now. Okay, I'm currently working on a book, 1,000 Days of Love. If I get an email from someone who says, would love to proofread a chapter from 1,000 Years of Love, I would be interested because at some point I'm going to need proofreaders for the book. And I will open that email. And you want to be very succinct in email writing. This is where the very first thing people should focus on is the subject. You should not have a subject that says something like requesting for your time, looking to pick your brain, request for coffee chat. And some people think it's cute to send a message that says, hey, I would love to pay for lunch or pay for coffee and take you out if you're open to having a chat with me. But lunch is $20. Like a person's time is worth a lot more than $20 probably. And it's not just 1 hour, you're like asking for a multi-hour process there. So I would recommend don't send that. And I used to send this thinking, if I pay for lunch, maybe they'd be interested. The best subject I got recently from a cold email outreach was, is this crazy ? That was the subject. And I was obviously, what is this about? Let me open and see it. And then this person sent me an email and the email itself was just 4 lines. They said, hey, I noticed that you're currently not converting subscribers in the most efficient way on LinkedIn. Here's a Loom video and I walked you through what you could do. If you're interested, let me know and I would love to talk. Something like that. And the Loom video was like a 1-minute long video where they walked through my profile and said, this is what you could be doing. Immediate value for me. Even if I don't book a call with them, I learned something from that email. After the subject, the email itself, do not send essays. Nobody has time to read essays. I spend 7 seconds per email that I get in a day. That's it. So in those 7 seconds, if the first 2 sentences catch my attention, I'll read more. Otherwise, you automatically bucket emails into emails from people who are asking for time, and then you just move on. You don't really think about it anymore. And so the first sentence has to be very clear and mention, why are you reaching out to me specifically? And this is not just a broadcast you're sending to 100 other people. And then the second sentence has to talk about, are you asking me of something, or are you giving me something? Or is this just an email to say, hi, I've followed your work, really admire what you've done, just want to say hi. That's all. That's a good email too. You don't have to give something as well. Sometimes it's fine to just say that, and maybe a few weeks from now, you can send another email with some, giving something.
So again, moving back to applying to US universities, obviously can be very, very competitive, especially when you're an international student. So from your experience, what is some practical advice that you would give other people to stand out in their application?
I would kind of divide your application into things that you cannot control, such as your GPA. Probably you can't control that. Your GRE score, maybe, if you're unwilling to take it a second time or a third time, let's say, that you can't change. A TOEFL score, GMAT score, that's it. But then there's things that you absolutely fully in your control is your essays, your CV/resume, your recommendation letters, and any other questions that they ask for which you're answering. I don't know, the best SOPs I've read in my time tell a story. They don't just regurgitate your life. And I realized telling stories applies to every single part of your life, including essays you write, a social media post you put out there, a video you create, even this podcast. Certain storytelling narratives work better than others. And, Steven Pressfield talks about this idea of hook, build, payoff. Like you have to have a strong hook, build up to something, and then there is a payoff. People need to learn how to tell good stories before they write responses to these SOPs and essays and so on.
So Ryan and I both obviously came in again as international students, and we are very, very intrigued by your club. So we hear you started the Unshackled Club, which helps skilled immigrants in the US with resources, guidance, and support to navigate immigration as well as their careers. So can you tell us a little bit about how did this start and what was it like building this, especially as a non-US citizen?
I definitely did not want to build anything remotely like this a few years ago. I just wanted to write books and build an education startup. That was my goal, at least in 2021, even early 2022. Unshackled as a book and as a community, you've heard of product market fit. This idea that once you put something out there and people start coming to it, there's a hockey stick like growth you see. I felt like we almost had a book market fit because I posted about this book online on LinkedIn August 9th, 2022. And then we had a great reaction to that. It reached several 100,000 people on LinkedIn. And this was when my LinkedIn had really not many followers per se. A few thousand people signed up to be interested in reading this book someday. Yeah, it was like Lego blocks, That was the first block. And then I had a chance encounter call with Brad Feld who is the co-founder of Techstars. So my mentor knew him and he connected me with him. And Brad cared about this problem. So he was willing to have a call. And then Brad said, you're not investable. He said that you're not investable. But if you go the crowdfunding route, I'd be willing to make a small donation to that. So then I thought, maybe I should set up a crowdfunding campaign just so I want Brad to be involved in this project in some way. So the next 6 weeks, worked really hard to set up a crowdfunding campaign on Kickstarter, which eventually ended up raising close to $50,000. And then a week after, I got a grant for $50,000 from Emergent Ventures. It's a foundation under the George Mason University, set up by Tyler Cohen. So they fund moonshot ideas, and immigration was one of their focus areas. You see how none of this was planned a few months ago, and then it happened. Then I got this grant, and so now I had money, and I also had a co-author who was a lawyer. So we spent the next 6 months writing the book, getting it designed, proofread, printed, and so on. And once we launched the book out there, and I just felt like the O-1 process is so long and frustrating and complex that it'll be helpful to have a community that gives you ongoing support. It's not just you read a chapter in the book and now you know everything about the O-1 to get it. So that's what spawned the community once we launched the book. And then the community slowly grew, and now we are almost at 1,000 members, and this is a paid community. It is a lifetime membership you pay for, but we also have a free newsletter, which we have about 28,000 immigrants who are subscribed to that, which also grew very slowly but organically.
No, that's awesome. We've been hearing a lot about the H-1B, obviously, as international students. And you just mentioned the O-1, but I feel like it's less commonly talked about. So could you explain just a little bit about like what it is, what it's for, and who it's best suited to?
Thanks for asking that, because it's not just little less, it's a lot less talked about. So I would say 1 out of 10 people probably know about the O-1. The O-1 is very much like the H-1B in terms of it is a work visa. You need a sponsor, somebody to sign off on your petition, and it is temporary. It's not meant to be a green card, which a lot of people think it is. It's not a green card, just a temporary work visa. Where it differs from the H-1B is, number one, it doesn't require you to go through a lottery like the H-1B does. Secondly, the O-1 doesn't require you to make a minimum wage. I mean, you still have to put some salary, but you don't have to put the salary like the H-1B where you have to make above the minimum wage. Here you can make as low as $50,000 a year. And this is great for founders who don't want to take money from their company or don't have money to take from their company. And third, it lets you renew it forever. So like you can renew it after the first 3 years. Every year you can keep renewing it. It's kind of a pain because every year you have to renew. But most people on O-1 eventually just file the EB-1A, which is not a green card, but it's pathway to a green card. The catch with the O-1, because there's always a catch in immigration, is that it requires you to meet certain criteria to show that you're at the top of your field. It is meant for people who are at the top of their fields. Like, let's just put it that way. The H-1B is meant for anybody who is a skilled immigrant, has a job offer, is paid a reasonable salary. But the O-1 is really meant for people who have significantly contributed to their fields and over a consistent period of time. And they measure this through certain criteria, which I recommend people should read about.
That's great. But I think I read that the first time you applied to the O-1 visa, you got denied. I was wondering what changed really in your approach that finally led to, the approval.
My first O-1 was an O-1B application. O-1B is meant for artists, people in the TV industry, motion picture, actresses, dancers, and so on. It was a coin toss decision. My lawyer and I, we thought, okay, let's go for the O-1B because I'm applying as a writer, even though I'm applying as a writer in technology and education. Hindsight is 2020, and I feel like that was a mistake. We should have just applied for O-1A. Second, I think I just had more evidence when I applied the second time around. I had a lot more press on my work. I had got a grant. I had a company. I had a book published. So I did have more evidence objectively. But I think the third main point is the second one just had a more coherent story. Once again, we come back to the importance of narrative and storytelling, because the O-1 application is also a place where you're convincing an officer who has no clue about what the hell you do. If you're a quantum computing, physicist, or if you're a biochem teacher, or if you're an influencer, social media influencer, they don't know what your field is about. They're not experts. You have to tell a story and tell them, here's my field. Here's why I'm one of the experts in the field. And here's what I've done for my field so far. So that storytelling was better in the second one than the first one.
For anyone listening who's considering the O-1 visa, what steps or strategies would you suggest for building a strong case like you did the second round time?
My advice for someone who is building their profile is stop building your profile and just go understand the requirements first. Because it's like trying to play chess without knowing the rules. First, go and understand in very, very, very depth, what are the different criteria? What do each criteria mean for your specific field? For example, let's take one criteria, judging. USCIS says that you have judged the work of your peers in your field, something like that. Now, what does that mean for you? Let's say you're a product manager. What does having evidence under the judging criteria mean for a PM? It could mean, number one, you've judged a hackathon. Like you participated in a university or a district level hackathon and you've been a judge. Number two, it could mean you've been on the deciding committee of an award or a scholarship. Number three, it could mean you have peer-reviewed papers in academic journals. Number 4, you've been on the conference, once again, paper committee that decides which papers get into a conference. Here are 4 different ways in which you can prove judging, for example. So like this, every criteria has certain nuances on what works as evidence and what doesn't. So first, go and understand this in depth. And the way you do that is, I would say, start with the free guide that I've published on O1. I'll give you guys the link and you can put it in the show notes. So we've done a good job of giving an overview in that chapter. Second, I would read at least 10 articles on the O1 online from different law firms and startups to understand in more depth. Third, I would reach out to a few people in my field who've gotten the O1 and then book a consult with them to understand what did they use as evidence. And then I would go to a lawyer. I would create an Excel sheet and put down all of the evidence that I think I already have. And then take this to a lawyer on a consult and tell them, here's what I have. Do you think I'm ready, first of all? Probably lawyer's going to say no. Almost no one's ready for an O1 when they first go to a lawyer. A lawyer is not the best person to tell you how you can get ready. But at the very least, a lawyer can tell you, like, you're lacking in this criteria, like you're lacking in this, you may have this criteria. Then you start building your profile.
And we spoke to a lot of new grads, Ashna and I, too. And one question that kept coming up was whether you offer, a personalized program or any help that guides people through the O1 application process.
We do. We have things ranging from $0, wherein you can just join the newsletter, read the free guides you put out there. We do free webinars once or twice a month, joining that, all the way to a program that literally handholds you through every step of the process, wherein it's called the autopilot program under Green Card Inc. And so somebody would, first of all, understand your profile in depth, and we work with a law firm in the back end who will be working closely with you throughout. And so it's not just a bunch of immigrants helping immigrants. And so that program handholds people and tells them, here's where you're lacking. Here are the list of judging competitions you should go and nominate yourself. We will do the research and tell you what to do. And you just have to really execute on what we're telling you to do for the most part.
I think that's a great point. We'll definitely put all the links that you mentioned in the video. So thanks for sharing that. Okay, let's move on to exciting part, which is your books. So first, we want to ask you about your book, Admitted, that has been a guide for so many international students. So what inspired you to write it, and what kind of impact have you seen it have?
Well, I like to think of Admitted as the very first brainchild or a baby. It took exactly 9 months for it to go from ideation to being out there in the world. Admitted was never supposed to be a book, just like Unshackled was never supposed to be a company. I think with Admitted, I just wanted to write a short PDF documenting whatever I knew about studying abroad. But then the moment I started writing it, I couldn't stop. I just kept writing, and you get sucked into it. It's like something has possessed you and now you have to finish this project. The best lesson I got from Admitted, that whole writing process, was I was always meant to write books and do something on my own. And that solidified that conviction that I had already, that I wasn't happy with being a corporate employee. And I just felt like this is not my calling. And Admitted made me realize that that is my calling.
Yeah, I was wondering, what's the most surprising feedback you've received from a reader that made you look at your journey in a new way?
I think the best compliment on my books I've received, the 2 books I published out there, is these 2 books, the topics I've covered are really complex and boring. Who wants to read about immigration? It's the last thing I would want to read about on a Saturday afternoon. So when I get messages from people that say that you've taken something that is so boring and made it super interesting, that shows that, hey, I'm a good writer and I can take something really bland and make a great dish out of it. So I feel like that makes me really feel good as a writer. I have gotten comments from people who think that by writing Admitted or Unshackled, I'm perpetuating a brain drain from India of people moving to the US and being in the US, which I think they're actually right in saying that. Of course, the books are focused on helping people move abroad and thrive there.
Of course, you have a great skill for writing, and you followed up with another book, Unshackled. So this book focuses on helping skilled immigrants thrive in the US. Following up from your last book, what motivated you to write like this one, and how do you think it's helped its readers?
This one, I knew it was going to be a book. Unlike Admitted, Unshackled, obviously we put the message out there saying I'm going to write this book, and then we raised money and then we executed on it. With Unshackled, what motivated me this time was frustration with the immigration system, because I had my O-1 denied. And obviously, I wanted to write something about the O-1 for 6 months, like since the time I came across and applied for it. But I thought, who is going to listen to me if I'm talking about how to get an O-1 and I don't have an O-1? It doesn't make sense. It's like somebody saying, I will teach you how to be a millionaire, and then they have $1,000 in their bank account. It doesn't make sense. So, or like someone telling me how to lose weight and they're actually obese. So I was like, who's going to listen to me? And then I got my O-1 denied. I was like, okay, what do we do right now? That's when I thought, how about I approach a lawyer? I still have a lot of things I think could be valuable if I share. But for this, we need someone who has authenticity and actually can help with the legality of it. So I approached Samir, who fortunately agreed eventually to work on this project. And in the beginning, it was just supposed to be about the O-1. But once again, like all of my projects, I've realized it starts with one block and then it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And we ended up writing this 370-page book on everything about the immigration system. It starts with like a history of policy. And my favorite chapter is the chapter 1 where we interviewed people at the White House who were there in 2013 when we tried passing a comprehensive reform almost, and then it got halted at the very end. It never passed. And this story is like a thriller story on what happened behind the scenes. And I somehow got in touch with someone who could tell me the entire story.
Wow.
So that was so interesting to write. And it also showed how in the US, it's all politics. Like policy is really about politics. Then part 2 of the book and part 3 of the book talks about visas and pathways to green card. So we covered every single like major pathway out there. And every chapter begins with a story first. Once again, storytelling principle, hook, like get people interested. And so that was my favorite part, to interview so many immigrants and get their stories. And each story took me 15 hours to write easily. And in those 15 hours, I really immersed myself in their story. I was in their shoes. I could like feel the anxiety and the fear they might have felt. Yeah. And so part 4 talks about the future of policy. So I feel like the book just became so much bigger than what we had planned. And it's also been read by at least 3,000 to 5,000 people so far, if not more, because there's a lot of plagiarism out there. So people might have given it away. Who knows? And I'm glad. I'm totally fine with that.
I think it's a superpower turning like policies, politics, immigration, like all this stuff into a fully refined story. I think that's a superpower. So like kudos to you for doing that. So we heard you're working on a new novel, which is titled 1,000 Days of Love, inspired by true experiences. So super interesting. And we want to know, again, what led you to write this story and what can the readers expect from your third book now?
Yeah, thanks so much for asking, because this one is like, it's like the current baby. It was inspired entirely by Rajesh, who I mentioned about before in the podcast. The seed of this story was planted on September 21st, 2021. I am someone who remembers all of the dates in my life very keenly because I journal a lot, so I know the dates. So that day, I came across this LinkedIn post by somebody in Rajesh's network who praised Rajesh in such a beautiful way. By then, I had met Rajesh for about 2 months, or I'd known him for 2 months. In those 2 months, he changed my life. And I don't know how else to say it, but there's like BC and AC, before Christ, after Christ. I think of my life as before meeting Rajesh and after meeting Rajesh. Like he was that turning point for me. So within a month, he became the closest person in my life. And we have a record. We've talked every day for the last 3.5 years, every single day.
How did you meet Rajit?
Somebody sent us an email connecting us and saying that, hey, Soundarya, you should meet this person who is my advisor, and he can help you with marketing your first book, Admitted. And then we ended up having a call, and that call went on for 2.5 hours. It was supposed to be just 5 minutes. We just kept talking and talking. I don't know, sometimes you meet someone and there's just this like sparks fly. They say it in a romantic context, but this is in a very spiritual context, I say it. Within 2 months, I just felt like he's given me so much. I want to do something for him. I want to write a book with him, for him, on him. That's around the time I read Tuesdays with Mori. It's this beautiful memoir where a student writes about his teacher who is actually dying. And before the book published, he was dead, the teacher, Mori. And I just kept like seeing Rajesh and Mori, Mori and Rajesh. I was like, I want to write something like this with him. For 3 years, I was working on the book in the background of Unshackled. Like Unshackled is what people thought I was doing, which I was. But in the background, I was always working on 1,000 Days of Love. At some point, it became a novel. Without going into any story, I'll just say that around April of last year, I decided to make it a novel, a fiction. And the story is really about family. It's about the families we choose. And if you don't mind, I'll actually read something out loud to you because I was literally working on this today. And I think it could give you a good idea of what the book is in just 2 sentences.
No, we
Yeah,
would
of
love
course.
that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And you guys are the first one to actually hear this. So every book, nonfiction, fiction, whatever it is, must have 2 things, a theme and a concept. So here's the theme and the concept for 1,000 Days of Love. The theme is love is not about passion or permanent. It's a daily choice shaped by the people we choose and closely intertwined with the inevitability of loss. That's the 1 sentence theme, wherein we take this concept called love, which everyone can resonate with. But then I try to change the meaning and just, try to show a different form of love through the book. Like a form of love where there's a young girl and this old man who fall in love with each other. Not in a romantic way, but in every other way. The concept of the book I wrote here is a 25-year-old young woman moves to San Francisco chasing love and ambition, only to find both in unexpected places. Through a dying mentor, fractured family ties, and 1,000 small moments that teach her what love and ambition truly is. That's just a very high level theme and concept for the book.
This is very touching, and I think you're covering some very prevalent concepts, but also difficult because it's not easy to explain love and loss and all these feelings, through. But we are very excited, and thank you so much for sharing that extract with us. Also, you are like superhuman at this point. You juggle roles as an author, entrepreneur, and advocate. No, it's really amazing. So I guess we want to know, like, how do you manage all these diverse responsibilities and like what keeps you going?
I do have a clear separation in my life. So that's something I intensely worked on in the last 6 months because I was taking a step back from Unshackled, took a step back around like September, October of last year because I wanted to focus on the book for at least a year. I have a clear separation where until the afternoon in any day, I don't do anything except working on something creative. Like right now it's the book. Eventually it might be something else. And then the afternoon is when a lot of the busy work begins, where I would check emails to see if there's emails, social media, WhatsApp messages from work phone and so on. And then I keep like a slot in the evening, late evening generally, to work on Unshackled. So it's really just bucketing the day. Like what I'm trying to say is having a clear separation, and 8 out of 10 times, I'm very strict about that. Sometimes it falls through when there's something urgent somewhere. But for the most part, I try to be very mindful of having this separation because the moment you open emails in the morning or open social media, it's the unpredictability that's both enticing and also incredibly disruptive.
Through your journey from zero to the one you are today, what is the most valuable lesson you've learned and how has it shaped your path?
I think I'm still very much learning this, by the way, but I'll say this anyway. Learn to make a lot of joke in life. I mean, Rajesh does this better than anyone I know. He's that guy who cannot go one conversation without telling a joke. But what that really shows about a person is that they don't take life so seriously, that they're willing to, roll with the punches, see it as it, like, take life as it comes and not get so sucked into the daily moments and frustrations, which we all have. I haven't learned this lesson, I'll be very honest. I'm still learning it. But I think someday I would like to say that, or somebody should say that she is this person who takes life very easily.